taping that for my HBO special. She was right. You can't see the audience from here. Good evening, everybody. Glad you could all come. My friend Jim is here from my men's group. He brought 3 dates with him. Haven't you heard, Jim, that now that Obama's coming in the White House, you're supposed to spread the wealth around? I got some other friends here who don't even have 1 date. Leanne asked us to come up with a persona for our stage show here, and I've been struggling with that for a while because there's so many strange things about me. It's hard to just come up with just one thing. My persona. My persona. Oh, my little whacker one. What does make my motor run? Motor run. My persona. My persona. You can thank Leanne for putting me on to that horrendous song. It's probably the dumbest song that I've ever heard. I actually like Weird Al's version of that song. The song was originally My Sharona. And Weird Al came up with much more intelligent lyrics for it. My Bologna. Oh, my little hungry one. Oh, I think the toast is done. Toast is done. Put on slice on my bologna. My bologna. My bologna. You probably noticed that my hair is a little bit wild. My whole life has been like one long bad hair day. Sometimes I would run a comb through it just before I was about to go to a meeting, and my son would see me and he'd say, "Dad, don't even bother." Once I put together a skit for some folks that had been on a project with me at work, and the guy that was playing me was an air conditioning contractor, and the first thing he did at the beginning of the skit was, that's where I got an idea what my persona was like. Leanne thinks I look like a long-suffering friend, long-suffering soul, kind of person that shit happens to. One of God's great laws, or wait a minute, maybe it's one of Murphy's laws, is that shit happens. And being Jewish, I'm one of God's chosen people. I'm one of the ones he chose to have shit happen to. For example, I was happily married for 11 years, and 11 out of 32 isn't bad. Then God spoke to my ex-wife in his very deep, God-sounding voice, and he said, "It's time. It's time now for shit to happen to Steve." And he set forth his most obnoxious lawyer, and he wrought the divorce from hell. Since we're on the subject of God, I actually met him once. I had breakfast with him in a Mexican restaurant down in San Diego. Stay with me on this. This is great. I had this colleague of mine. He was about 75 years old at the time. He had white hair, white beard. His friends said he looked like God. He did look like God, except for the lumberjack shirt. One time I was having breakfast with him at this Mexican restaurant. We were having this long animated conversation, and there was a woman at the next table sitting there with her 4-year-old daughter, and she noticed us having this really engaging conversation. And when she got up to leave, she walked over to us and she said, "Oh, are you father and son?" And I said, "No, this man is God." And the little girl's jaw dropped like a foot. She said, "Mommy, is that God?" And the last thing I heard is the mom was whisking out the door, and she says, No, sweetie, God doesn't eat breakfast burritos and wear Pendleton shirts." How do you describe the persona of somebody who talks to people in men's restrooms? Would you call that person a toilet whisperer? Maybe the poet Robert Bly would call me Porcelain John. It's always bugged me that Americans have to have these paper toilet tissue butt gasket seat covers in the restroom. Says there's no telling what kind of terrible diseases you can pick up from a toilet seat. Maybe Tourette syndrome, maybe dyslexia, maybe even apoplexy. Can't be too careful these days. Well, it's always, they have these directions on because it's a pretty complicated piece of equipment. It says first pull up and then pull down. It's kind of like the directions on putting on a seatbelt on an airline, which also requires a printed set of directions that you have to be reminded of every time you fly. Well, I'm sitting on a can in the restroom at this community college where I used to live, and I noticed that the brand of these butt gaskets in this particular restroom was called Lifeguard. And I get incensed at some of these like overblown advertising claims. In fact, I have what's called a bullshit alarm in my head. It goes off whenever I hear bullshit, and I start like shaking real hard. So I get a little pissed off. I come out of the stall and I see this guy shaving up at the sink ahead of me, and I call out to him and I said, "Hey buddy, do you know those toilet seat tissues can save your life?" And he has to kind of compose himself for a minute until he figures out what the persona is that this guy is talking to. And he says, "Oh, I thought you were going to say something important." I just can't get no respect. Well, now we've come to the middle set of my show here, and Leanne said we're supposed to put our funniest stuff at the beginning and at the end, and so this middle part is just filler. So you can take a break from laughing for a while, and I won't get marked down for it. Well, with our new president coming in, the U.S. is going to start getting connected with the rest of the world now, and some of the old issues are probably going to start resurfacing, like going on the metric system. Well, have you ever wondered what might happen to some of our old expressions when we go metric? Will we be saying things like, "A miss is as good as a kilometer," or "He sure got his kilogram of flesh"? "Give a guy a micron and it'll take a centimeter." It's a civil war, the ducks versus the beavers. Ducks have a first and 9.14. Recently rode Amtrak down to the Bay Area and back. Anybody here rode Amtrak recently? Good form of, it's a good form of transportation if you're not concerned about which century you ride in. Trains have two speeds, too slow and not moving. Feels like you're riding in a wheelchair on a gravel road uphill and some kid's randomly applying the brake every few minutes. Never take Amtrak if you're going to a job interview. By the time you get there, someone else will already have the job and a year's experience. Now, how about those reclining coach seats? Pretty comfortable for sleeping? That's what they said. That is if you like sleeping in a 2-foot-long bed at a 45-degree angle. And then they got these fluorescent lights over your head that kind of like kind of like these lights. It's like trying to go to sleep on an operating table. And then you got this guy on this over-amplified loudspeaker coming on every few minutes telling you things you already know or don't need to know, like the dining car closed an hour ago. And then there's the crying babies. The trains aren't non-stop, but the crying sure is. I think on my train they rounded up all the screaming babies and they put them all in my car. It was like being in the waiting room in an obstetrician's office with 15 colicky babies all screaming at the same time. Well, with the seats, the lights, the PA system, and the crying babies, it was like trying to get a good night's sleep at the Abu Ghraib Hotel. And then there's the challenge of using the bathroom on the fly. You got, the floor is moving left and right and going up and down, and you got like this 4-inch diameter target that you're aiming at. And you're holding onto the wall, trying to keep yourself from taking a shower. It's times like that I wish I was a woman. It's times like that I wish I was flying, even if I have to sit next to the shoe bomber. But flying has its own challenges too. Remember when you used to fly back from a foreign country and they used to ask you what you had to declare, and you had to think of things like liquor and jewelry and Persian rugs? Well, now they're not concerned about stuff like that. They're concerned about more important things. Things like toothpaste and hair cream. You got to have just the right amount of it. So you got to measure out, you got to have one of those really accurate digital scales at home so you can roll up your toothpaste in this tiny little crumb of a tube. The last time I flew, when I got to my seat, I panicked because I realized that I had forgotten to declare my athlete's foot ointment in my carry-on bag. And thoughts came up like, what if I get arrested for failure to declare ointment? They call that FDO in TSA lingo. Will I ever be able to get another job again? Some of you know I moved to Eugene recently, and I'm still getting used to the place. It's kind of a quirky place. That's what one person told me when I said I was moving to Eugene. They said, it's quirky. It's a quirky place. Y'all know what that means? Well, they're into environmentally conscious, healthy eating here. Like this morning I had a slice of 100-grain organic bread and it soaked up all my bodily fluids. My brother-in-law, who lives in Springfield, baked it for me. He said, try some. It's very Eugene. Very Eugene. When I first got to Oregon, I was living at my sister's place, and I was living in this really luxurious fifth-wheel trailer overlooking the Mackenzie River. I had a good setup. I had my patio furniture. I had wireless internet. I had my ping pong table, and I had my bocce ball set. It was pretty upscale. The neighbors said I was RV trash. As my classmates know, I like to ride my bike a lot. That's what the vest is for. I noticed quite a few other people came here with these. I thought they were going to come up here with me. I like to be seen. Like when I went into Fred Meyer the other day and a little girl walked up to me and said, "Oh, are you the guy that pumps the gas out there?" I like riding my bike, but I like to do it with my shirt on. What's it with all these people in Eugene that ride around without their shirts? Like, especially in the summertime anyway. Is that another Eugene thing? It's a quirky place. The other day I needed to buy a bottle of wine, and I rode past 7 bike shops and 15 dairy marts, and I couldn't find a single liquor store. It's the only town in America that has more bike shops than liquor stores. And what's up with all these coffee kiosks all over town? Do you have to be somebody's brother to have a coffee business? You got Dutch Brothers and you got Alon Brothers. And now that I'm a local, I say Alon. I don't say Alan. And then they got the Beanery, the Bean Hopper, the Steaming Bean, Bean Buzz, Liquid Bean, Supreme Bean, Java Zone, Jumpin' Java, Jitterbug, and Fast Lane Coffee. And that's just the first half of the first page of the Eugene phone book. And why do these coffee stands have to look like gas stations? You're supposed to walk up and hold out your cup and say, hey, fill her up with regular. I'm running on empty. Doesn't anybody get out of a car anymore? But this is Eugene. It's a quirky place. And they ride bikes here. The other day I saw somebody pulling away on a bike from one of these coffee stands, and they were pulling a trailer with these two scraggly-haired hippie toddlers, and they were sipping organic, fair trade, free-range, vanilla soy lattes. And they had dual cup holders. Do we have all these drive-up coffee places because we don't have any time anymore? Like the time it takes to make a bowl of oatmeal? Most people don't have that kind of time anymore. So that's why they came up with rolled oats. Rolled oats. They cook in 5 minutes. But some people don't have 5 minutes to spare, so they came up with 1 minute oats. They're like rolled oats. They just chop them up. They cook in 1 minute. But even that was too much time, so they came up with instant oats. Just add hot water. But even an instant can be an eternity. What's next in this fast-paced world? Intravenous oats? Oats directly injected into your bloodstream? Like you have a feeding tube from your alarm clock plugged right into your body. You set it. When your alarm goes off in the morning, you wake up and you've already had breakfast. But I'm not like that, and I'm living in Eugene now. It's a quirky place. I like my oats whole, and I like them fresh. That's why I have my own thresher. I go out in the morning, and I thresh my oats. Throw them in the pot tonight, they'll be ready in time for Christmas. Since I moved from Springfield to Eugene, I don't go to Springfield much anymore. The only thing I go to Springfield for is for the gentlemen's clubs. It's not because I'm a dirty old man. It's not that at all. I'm actually a very generous, compassionate, kind Buddhist. But when I read in the Eugene Weekly that a lot of the folks that work in these gentlemen's clubs are actually U of O co-eds that are working their way through school, when I read that, I wanted to help. So when you see me slipping a wad of green stuff into their thongs or their G-strings or whatever, it's not what you think. Just helping to put a kid through school. Thank you all.